Happy holidays from all of us here at Moral Side of the News. We're glad you're along this weekend. I'm John Blim with the WHAS Crusade for Children. Thanks for joining us today. With me, as always, is a distinguished panel: Reverend Clay Calloway, West Louisville Ministers Coalition; Reverend Harriett Akins-Banman, Centenary United Methodist Church, New Albany; Reverend Sally McClain, Christian Church, Disciples of Christ; and Father John Stoltz from St. Aloysius Catholic Church. Our first topic: Governor Andy Beshear was sworn into his second and final term as Kentucky governor this week. He called for a governing style that embraces, quote, compassion and empathy and rejects the politics of anger and division. Analysts suggest his speech sounded like he could be aiming for higher office down the road. So panel, turning to you, he addressed us both as Kentuckians and Americans. What do you think the future holds for Andy Beshear?
I think the future's so bright he can wear shades. I think it's a bright, bright future ahead of him. Many people have said that, have suggested that could be a trajectory for him. And I've said on occasion that he's not just a politician, he's a statesman. And there's a big difference between the two. The dividing line: politicians look for the next election, and statesmen look for the next generation. So he has proven that in his first administration. He governed at great risk of making some very difficult and unpopular decisions, but to the benefit of the state during the COVID crisis, during the natural disaster crisis, and on and on. So and then economic boom. So he has done a remarkable job in just about every category that you measure a statesman by and governor by. So and one of the very few Democratic governors in this current Republican-drenched climate across the United States. Most governors in most states are not Democratic governors. So he has really went against the grain, defied the law of political gravity to be elected and reelected. So I think it's a commendable accomplishment and a great opportunity for the state of Kentucky and the nation.
I appreciated his focus on, as far as Kentuckians were concerned, the focus on economic growth and change, and also economic growth and moral growth. And I really appreciated the hint of that, because it shows us both sides of the spectrum, right? Where hopefully going to do well economically, everybody worries about that, but then brings it home to each of us as individuals. How will I morally live into this leadership and take responsibility and be the best I can be? I appreciated that.
I did too.
And I'm hoping he's a model of the leadership to come and what we're going to see in the future, because I think that talking about the toxic climate, which he said that has occurred and that we're in now, I think that he tries to filter that in such a way that it remains positive with him. And it's not like he hasn't had some really difficult issues himself. The National Bank shooting, that was a personal tragedy for him.
And national attention as well.
And national attention as well. And so I think he has a very bright future ahead. And I'm just really proud that we can say that he is our governor.
As governor, I think he has multiple responsibilities, and one responsibility is responding to immediate needs. And so during COVID, of getting on television every day to inform Kentuckians about that, and then also responding to two historic disasters in our natural disasters in our state at the time, responding to them immediately. Those kinds of actions, I think, overshadowed his other responsibilities in terms of creating policy with the legislature. And so he did it. That was a part of his work, but I don't think it got the attention that his other leadership did among what people perceived him, the voters perceived him in Kentucky. I think the fact that he's a Democrat in the South, in a primarily conservative state, that he got elected again, I think, got elected the first time, but then got elected again. I think that says a lot about him and about what Kentuckians think of him. Because in a sense, I read him as more of a moderate, but that just being a Democrat goes against our political grain in the state, and so that the fact that he got elected, I think, shows a lot of respect that people have for him.
John, you mentioned something again. It made me. He gave us governors and so many elected officials. They serve as not only as governing entities, but they serve as kind of a moral calming entity. I mean, they have a kind of a pastoral kind of a function that I used to tease Mayor Fisher about that. I call him the mayor, the pastor of the city of Louisville. He was always there, the crisis going on, and it's kind of a pastoral function, and that is especially true in the midst of crisis. He had a very unique and very effective way of wrapping his arms around the state, giving it a hug when it needed it most. You don't always have the pet answers, but just that weekly, daily, I think it was daily updates on COVID, that was just so reassuring. I mean, it's much like the Fireside Chats that Roosevelt made famous back in the 40s. It was so reassuring. So it had a kind of a pastoral, a kind of a quality to his administration that was much needed during our time of great crisis in this state.
It really goes along with his statement he made in his speech, be different to make a difference.
Right.
And so he is led by that example.
By example. And we as pastors, we know that, oftentimes most of our sermons are not preached with words.
Right.
They're preached with our feet and our actions. So he was able to lead, I think, by example.
Well, the economic growth is important, but I'm a little bit prejudiced because I want to see the really good farmland in Kentucky preserved. I do not want to see it all covered up with concrete and shopping centers.
Battery
and
plants and things
battery
like that.
plants. Kentucky is beautiful. Many people don't realize how beautiful Kentucky is. And so there are parts of it I hope that they preserve and keep for future generations so that they will know. I mean, sometimes I'm afraid people don't even know where milk comes from. What's a cow? How does that work? So things like that. And the farming community, Shelby County was a large farming community.
Yeah, and because it's close proximity to Louisville, it's become more and more a suburb
Oh, you're telling me.
of Louisville. And that's the way of the nation, but it's in such close proximity that it will probably lean more towards urbanization than otherwise. But they did get a White Castle out there recently, so that's probably the biggest change in Shelbyville. They got a White Castle there. That's a huge step in towards the future.
It's been there for a while, Clay.
Yeah,
That
but
White
it
Castle
wasn't there
is-
20 years ago, So, but anyway, I get what you mean about the farmland being preserved.
So that's the biggest sign of suburbia coming to Shelbyville is
Indeed.
a White Castle.
A White
possibly.
Castle. By this sign, you shall know.
I don't know. There's all the factories that are going up, and I know that's going to lead to more jobs,
It will.
which is very important. But then that's all going to mean that's going to be more in housing, more
Everything.
everything. But yes, I think you're right, Clay. I think it's moving that direction.
So this is Beshear's second and final term. He'll be only 50 when this term is up. So
He's young.
we shall see.
He's Obama was only he wasn't 50 when he was elected president.
No,
was
48, I think.
he? Yeah, late. I mean, so he's got a bright. Bright, and all eyes is on Kentucky now. I mean, the economic indicators. That was another point, and the questions for today. Kentucky, for a change, is more the head and not the tail. That we're moving against the trend in terms of economic recovery. I think of job creation, economic growth, all those indicators where Kentucky has been at the tail, well, now the head leading the pack. We talk about these battery plants that are coming online. That's going to be a huge economic boost for the state, among other things. So it's one of the rare points in Kentucky history where we actually at the head and not at the tail, and it's happening under this administration.
I'm trying to. How old was Kennedy when he became president?
He was in
Come
his
on,
40s.
He was in his 40s. He was the youngest president at the time. I
Wasn't
want
he
to say
like
44, 43.
Yeah, something like that. That's what I was thinking. So Beshear actually, in terms of youth, is right in that age range.
We shall see, as they say. Our second topic, we're going to switch to national and international news. President Joe Biden said, quote, continued indiscriminate bombing in Gaza has left Israel with less and less support around the world. He said, quote, you cannot say there's no Palestinian state at all in the future, end of quote. Panel, the president says Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu has tough decisions to make, but that the U.S. will continue to protect Israel. So there's a lot there.
Well, I'll let somebody else speak on that one. It's just horrible. I mean, that's the only word I can utter that describes what's taking. It's not a war. That's annihilation. And the United States has hitched its wagon to that act of annihilation that's taking place over there now. And you're talking about losing support. I mean, anytime you move to do the wrong thing in the way that it's being done on the scale now, you lose the moral foundation that undergirds your movement. Here Israel had, and the inhabitants of Louisville, those that were relocated there in the 40s, they were the victims of a Holocaust. And now you're in the process of creating your own version of a Holocaust for people that can't defend themselves against your attacks. I mean, it's way past responding to defense. This is an all-out annihilation of a humanity that was already oppressed because of the near apartheid structure that existed there. So it's just a mess. He's finally coming to realize, and the polls, the political polls are saying that most Americans do not support that, but they're taking place right now. So he's probably realizing that it's going to have some political consequences for him.
I think the issue is so complicated, and one of the things I do, and it's really difficult to do, so I don't think I do it well, is try to separate out the various populations that are there. So the obvious one would be the difference between Hamas, which I read as a terrorist organization, so the news, that's how I hear it on the news, and then the Palestinians, largely innocent, and largely victims found in this war. Children, women, mothers, families, others, innocent men, those are victims. And then separate out Jews throughout the world, and which we must do, who are here, even here in the United States, because of this war and others, victims of anti-Semitism, which is not good. And then the Israeli people, the nation of Israel and the people there, who may or may not want all the way the war is fought out. And then the Israeli government, which is I look as a different entity with its prime minister Netanyahu. So that makes a really complicated issue. And so I look at that and look and say that we have to put in our mind, I think, those who are innocent and who are victims of this war, not only the Palestinians, but also the Israelis, who were victims of a very vicious terrorist attack and who are now afraid because their nation is small and they live so close to others that they think have animosity against them. As well as the Israeli government, which is probably the most conservative government, as President Biden said, in the history of Israel, and its own prime minister not popular among the Israelis, and I'm thinking not popular in the world either, and sort of it's that government's will that's creating this policy of trying to do an act of justice against terrorism, but also doing it in such a way that it's losing popularity in the world, where even its greatest ally, the United States, is giving them warnings about it. I look at it as very complicated and hard to parse out, and at the same time, trying to seek out justice and mercy in the midst of all of this, and even though trying to put in this worldwide desire also for peace in the region as well.
And peace with justice.
Yeah,
And the dilemma is that we have this overwhelming grief that is worldwide. And we not only have the grief and suffering in this small piece of the world, right, but we continue to have the grief and suffering of Ukraine, and two leaders from those different countries that are calling the shots, causing this havoc worldwide. It astounds me that this happens. Does that make sense?
It makes a lot of sense.
I think it's even more complicated, Clay, than you're saying, because I think that other countries surrounding in the Middle East are also a part of what's going on. And so you get, I'm hearing that Iran is a major player and Hezbollah.
Yeah.
And so that's even complicating it even more.
Yes.
And I don't, sometimes in the worst of times, I think that a leader rises up. I think that's part of our faith tradition. And I think we're looking for that leader that knows how to figure this out, because just violence upon violence upon violence back and forth isn't going to solve
Are you
any
hopeful
issue.
there will be one, and do you see one or feel one?
Well, I mean,
a leader, that is.
we mentioned the word moral, okay, and we talk about complications. One thing about a compass, I use the term moral compass. One thing about a compass, if you look at it, it has a lot of ticks around that compass, but there's only one due north. That due north does not compete with any of the ticks around that compass. There's only one due north. So even though it's complicated, there's a lot of ticks around the compass, there's only one due north. There is a right way. There's never a right way to do wrong. So there is a due north, a due moral north in this, and doing the right thing has always been the challenge of the people of God. Israel, the state of Israel is not the Israel of the Bible. Let's be clear about that. They are not the same. I mean, just because they're Israel doesn't mean that they are the Israel of the Bible. So if they were, then they would be subject to all that the Bible has to say about Israel. But even if you did use the same standard of making them the Israel of the Bible, then God never once let them off the hook for doing the right thing, not once. Historically, Israel of the Bible, the northern kingdom, they didn't have a single good king, not one in the northern kingdom. Only had a handful in the southern kingdom. And God never let them off the hook with demanding that they do the right thing. So if we use the same standard in the Bible to apply to them, then he would be looking at this thing quite different than the news media, than the United States government. He'd be holding them accountable for every death that occurs over there. And so I think that there has to be a moral compass to navigate your way through this maze of the complications. And I think that to say it's complicated kind of as a cop-out to some degree, because we acknowledge that there's not a way out, and there's not a right way to make your way through this muck and mire that's over there right now.
Yeah, but Clay, I use the word complication because it's sometimes so easy to make very rash judgments in the midst of war, and the populations are just so different, and people will make rash judgments that apply to one whole group. So this is not just an Israel versus Palestinian issue. This is various groups and factions within each one that are differing with each other. And I think you may even find some Palestinians and some Israelis in agreement over all of this. And so it's very different than, say, the Ukraine and Russia war, where I really do think that there are two distinct sides, just two, and one certainly has been the aggressor, the other is the one in defense. But that's not the case here. And here I think that there are various factions, and I think simple, very rash judgments. I do agree with you on this point about a moral compass and a truth that everyone needs to get into. That's definitely true.
And you don't hear that voice coming out of
Not
Israel.
in the midst of all
You
that.
don't hear it. I mean, I hear it on the sidelines, but no true. You don't have a Menachem Begin. You don't have a strong, clear, moral trumpet being blown out. In the midst of all that, you have this political leader, but you don't really see any moral leaders emerging, giving voice to what is right in this situation. So that is the void there, and I don't know how they operate as a state, how they even consider that. Iran, of course, they claim to be, led by some religious leader, but Israel does not subscribe to that. They are a democracy. The only way they can really determine is when you go to the ballot box. They keep electing Netanyahu, so you can say that the responsibility does fall on the people that continue to elect this guy. So, so that was where that is.
But I'm wondering if the hope lies in the voice of the people.
It is.
Those that are living that daily hell, and those of us around the world who are saying enough is enough, and rise together to be that moral compass and support.
Well, you see in all this debates about these college presidents and so-called anti-Semitism, and whatever that means. So those are people that have the courage to give a dissenting voice. Okay, and it seems that anytime you give a dissenting voice about anything that's remotely related to Israel, no matter how right you may be, you automatically are subject to some level of persecution, and that comes with the territory of being a follower of Christ too. So speaking truth does have its consequences. You can even get crucified for that. But you see that anyone who dares to speak out with a challenging voice against Israel, they themselves become persecuted. And I think that we need to move away from that and let truth, speak truth to power, and let the truth guide, be the moral compass guiding to a solution that otherwise would just be just one continuous quagmire bomb hole after another. Because what's taking place over there now, even before the Hamas attack, Palestine and Gaza was the highest concentration of people on this planet. You have people that's just the highest concentration of humans was in Gaza. And they had a tremendous amount of checkpoints. Many have said it's the closest thing to apartheid anyone has ever seen. I know Desmond Tutu said that. Closest thing to apartheid they've seen anywhere. Right there in Gaza. They had to go through checkpoints and be evaluated and regulated just to go from one part of town to the other. It was horrible even before this attack took place. So until they get to the point of really looking at the big picture and want to do the right thing about the people that are there, for the neighbors, like the Bible suggests, recognize the poor. I mean, all those themes that are intended to be moral guides, until they go to that, it will never be a so-called peaceful. And there's no justice, no peace without justice. So if you ain't going to do the right thing, then it's not going to turn out right.
So later in this program, toward the end, I'm going to ask you your predictions for 2024 or thoughts, and it sounds like leadership and peace is something you all hope for in 2024. In a season of giving it is right now, so let's talk about this. Some high-profile names are stepping up. Among them, Taylor Swift donated $1 million this week to aid tornado victims in Central Tennessee. Panel, what are you going to suggest to your congregations this holiday season in the season of giving? About 5 minutes left.
Well, I'm not preaching, so somebody needs
I mean, giving is, it's more blessed to give than receive. That's
Giving
a short
in many
answer.
ways, right?
That's a short answer.
Yeah. Okay, I can move on.
So, there's a reward in that, and it's its own reward in giving. And though this is a season of giving, the spotlight is not on us. Sad to say, most of us in the receiving mode. What's in it? Gimme, gimme, gimme. My name is Jimmy. So we're in that mode. But it's the time to reverse that and consider giving rather than receive it.
I was going to say, I think it goes on all year. I mean, when it's just at Christmas and everybody makes this big urge to do something then, there are people that suffer all year.
So it's more than just a tax deduction at the year end is what you're saying?
Yes, I think so.
And in Floyd County, where I serve in Indiana, we have this large population of people in need. We have students who go to school hungry every single day, and they're getting food and they're getting care. And I'm thinking, what happens when spring semester rolls around? So the message, I think for us, and we have the opportunity to proclaim this message, especially now in this season, is that the season of giving goes on and on and on, because the want and the need are there.
The giving is always appropriate all year long, and I think that what this season helps with is becoming mindful of need, and then letting that touch your heart, which that can also continue through the year too, but being more aware of of others and of need, I think, is a part of the hallmark of this season. And then giving as well, responding charitably, but not just an immediate response where we think it's over. Honestly, charity is something, being a good steward is something that's required all the time.
Well, this is a crusade for children.
It is, right in
Okay.
this very room.
So we're in perpetual giving mode. You can give all year. I mean, we do receive contributions all year if one chooses to do so.
Yes.
So we have learned to perfect what my pastor, he's a college president, he said the way that a college president shakes a hand is like this. so we have perfected the crusade handshake, so we're always looking to receive and thank those who are willing to give to this righteous and just cause. So it is all year. We hopefully that it gets the spotlight during this time of the year, thank God. So we'll take it any way we can. And so I think that it's more blessed to give than receive, and I think that's a message that we need to keep trumpeting.
I'd like to come back to Taylor Swift's
Yeah,
example.
sure.
I'm very impressed.
And I like Taylor Swift, I'm liking her more and more. I really
like
do.
her. You know, grew up with her because my daughter was growing up with her, and I appreciate her example of giving without second thought. It seems, and her age. You know, she's a young person who has made it, and I'm really hopeful that her example will inspire other young people to give.
And you've got other examples too. Dolly Parton came in after the fires
Very
in
much so.
Tennessee, and she has always done a
Continually.
lot. So you have some of these people who are taking the lead and doing things. Other sports people have done things as well. So it's really a good thing to see, because I think they are
LeBron
an
James has
example.
done a lot of that, you know, the foot basketball season, so a lot of them have done that.
Okay, we've got about 3 weeks left in 2023, and it's been quite a year. Let's hear your reflections on the past year, and as we talked about earlier, your hopes for 2024. We've got about a minute and a half left.
Just hope for more in 24. I mean, not just do better, learn your lessons. I mean, take your L's as a lesson. You know, U of L is going through a crisis right now with the basketball team. But you can learn your lessons and adjust yourselves and try to make some adjustments so that you can make a better impact in the year to come.
I think staying healthy is important, and active, being active and movement, because I think, especially when you get to be older, if you stop, you stop.
I'm trying to sit up
Gotta
better
keep
right now.
going. Keep going.
We've got a minute left.
Okay.
I want two things.
All right.
As I thought about it, we have, as we have talked, two major wars going on in our world right now, and I think that there are numerous other small wars that are happening, and I want peace by the end of the year. The other thing I want is, this is different. It's, I think a lot of difficulty, problem, sin, evil is coming as through
30 seconds.
through social media, and it's coming through people's speech. And I think that we would all do well learning more about an ethic around speech. I specifically say a journalistic ethic.
And
to
I
learn
have
how
to
speak
go.
well.
We have to, Ms. Harriett, one word.
Togetherness.
Absolutely. Thanks for watching this program, Moral Side of the News. We'll be back again next week with an all-new episode. So long for now.